Welcome to the Big O Show on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe.
Still the same damn kid from Oklahoma, same old dreams hanging off my shoulders, wishing and waiting on a shooting star for all to see.
And now your host, straight out of Oklahoma, former Buffalo Bill, Jerry Ostroski.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma.
Welcome in everybody. It is Thursday night, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. That can only mean one thing. It is now time for the Big O Show here on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. And as always, folks, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as we climb and, we get more and more subs. And that's because of you, the listener and the viewer. And we appreciate you as always. And thanks for taking the time to listen to our Buffalo Bills specific content. And we've got a big game this Sunday. I guess you could call it the Ralph Wilson Senior Bowl, as the 10-3 Buffalo Bills, coming off a wild loss to the Los Angeles Rams, take on the 12-2 Detroit Lions. This Detroit team, 12 straight wins. They are a 1.5-point favorite at home at Ford Field. This game will be at 4:25 Eastern, 3:25 Central, and the over-under, folks, is 54.5 points. We'll get to Dr. Brad Bowen from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance here in a few, as Brad, like a lot of you that are listening today, are digging out of a big lake effect snowstorm. Just was talking to Joe Miller a little bit, of course, and Joe spent the day along with his family digging out. And I have to say, folks, I love the city of Buffalo. I don't miss lake effect snow. Don't mind winter. Don't like lake effect snow. So it's funny. A big storm has hit Buffalo. And as you know, in the past, when storms hit Buffalo, they take the team to Detroit to play. Well, we're already going, so we ain't got to worry about rescheduling and doing all those things. But again, Bills take on the Lions this weekend, and just some particulars about this game. Detroit 6-1 at home, Buffalo 6-0 at home. Buffalo's away record is 4-3. Detroit's away record 6-0. You look at points scored per game. The two highest scoring offenses in the league will play Sunday, as Detroit comes in with 32.1 points per game. That's first. Bills 30.5 points per game. That is good for second. And then you look at points allowed, and Detroit is second with only 18 points per game. And the Bills come in at 20.6. That's good enough for eighth in the NFL. Not bad from that Bills defense, much maligned Bills defense. And last week we broke down the Bills offense with some advanced analytics. Today we'll get into the Bills defense. We'll talk a little bit about something Chris Sims said today that I think is highly important to get into. And he makes a really, really good point. Like him or not, Chris Sims of the Believe Network, and we'll talk about what he had to say about that Bills defense a little bit. Bills, again, coming in first in the league, plus 17 and plus minus. The Detroit Lions come in at plus 8. That gives them seventh in the league. Pretty damn good by the Lions. Passing yards per game, Lions 243 a game is good enough for fourth. Bills 229. That ranks them 12th in the league. Rushing yards per game, Lions 151 yards per game. This is going to be a big emphasis this game, folks. That Lions running game behind probably the two best running backs in the league as far as a tandem goes in Sonic and Knuckles. And we'll talk a little bit about them later in our keys to the game. But rushing yards, again, 151 for the Lions, fourth. Bills, 125 rushing yards a game. That gives them 11th, especially after a very poor performance running the ball last week against the Rams. Passing defense. This is where there's a little bit of an issue with the Lions defense and the Lions team in general. They have given up 224 yards per game, good enough for 23rd. And the Bills, 9th with 208 yards per game. And then rushing yards by the defense. The Detroit Lions, another stiff test for this Buffalo Bills running game. They're only giving up 93 yards a game. That's fifth in the league. Bills come in at 123 a game. That's good enough for 19th. And you would think the Bills, with their defensive woes as of late, they would actually be giving up more per game, but they are not. But as we do every week here on the Big O Show, we go to our good friend, Dr. Brad Bowen from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. And we're going to talk a little bit about this Bills injury report, as they seem to be getting a little bit healthy at the right time. But, hey, we're kind of going we got an injury report today, but it's kind of hard to be, no participation when you're sitting behind a computer, Brad, watching everything on Zoom today, right?
Pretty tough. I think it's an important point to bring up that as these guys try to get healthy, it's tough to get healthy from being on your own couch at home, not getting treatment. So certainly something to take in mind as we move towards this weekend's game, is that these guys that are sitting at home that need treatment aren't getting it.
Well, it's funny you talk about that, Brad, and I was thinking, like, everybody's like, man, this is another day. We're going to talk a little bit about Taylor Rapp and his neck and his shoulder. We're going to talk about Rasul Douglas, the knee. What better way to get treatment than to go ahead and get down to a pair of shorts and a T-shirt and go jump into a snowbank, right? I mean, that's about as good of an ice plunge as you can get, right?
You'll get that for sure, but that only lasts for so long, and then you got to get some blood flowing again.
Well, I mean, you just do contrast, man. You crank the house up to like 80, 85, and you just go back and forth. You jump in the snow for a few minutes. You go back inside. I mean, all these guys spend all these damn money on ice baths. I mean, hell, you're in Buffalo. Just go jump in the snow.
Stand outside for about 2 minutes, you'll be frozen solid.
Hey, let's get right to safety. Taylor Rapp, neck and shoulder. Anything you've seen from him, and like I said, I know it's hard trying to predict things. You don't have anything as far as news reports today with these guys at practice, but he would have been a do not participate. Seems that neck and shoulder type stuff has lingered him most of the year, which you would expect from a physical safety like he is. Just kind of maybe some updates on him, and what do you think about his availability this weekend?
Yeah, a guy that comes downhill like that is going to get banged up here and there. I guess the good news is that last week he was listed as limited and played. Tough to be moved to limited when you're not practicing today, but he is getting rest. Between yesterday and today, yesterday was a walkthrough, didn't participate. Today, sitting on the couch, so hopefully that neck is feeling pretty good come Sunday. I would expect to see him play. He's been playing well and hitting people hard, so hopefully come this weekend he's doing more of the same.
Real quick, and I'd like to talk a little bit about maybe some of the things, and I think it's something that it's really cool with our listeners, and you can help us with this. And, there's some things you can always do. I mean, you hear injuries, and there's some things that you can do to help a player get through a game that maybe has a nagging type injury. And you talk about neck and shoulder, and I want to talk a little bit about, you see some of these guys that play and they got these big pie plates hanging off of their shoulder pads, or in my son's case, he wears something called a Kerr collar that it's very, very discreet and can't tell. Now, that I saw the Lions player this past weekend when I was watching their game, he wore one. Maybe if you got that neck and shoulder stuff going on, what do those devices do for a player to allow him maybe to get through a game that he wouldn't be able to get through if he wasn't wearing one?
A lot of it is limiting end range position. So that's where most people get hurt. You take a ligament too far, it breaks. You take a muscle too far, it breaks. Take a joint too far, it breaks. And having some padding around your neck that limits your range of motion allows you to still hit somebody hard, but your neck only goes so far because that device is helping you. And then you get back up and you're there again the next play. So I don't think those are ever bad devices to have, especially when you're working through something like Taylor Rapp does. Right. Now, the downside to that is because it's limiting range of motion, a guy that's got to have his head on the swivel might feel limited by that, and not like having that on his shoulder pad. So it's very up to the players whether they wear that or not, but I think they can be very helpful at times.
A lot different than when you and I played, where the trainer took a shoestring and rolled a towel around it and put a little bit of like a sock thing over it and just tied it on the end, and that was your neck roll, right? A little bit more scientific.
Same idea. They're a little more expensive now, though.
Exactly. And also, if they did practice today, obviously we know they did not. Rasul Douglas, some people maybe were talking about ribs and stuff, but he's on the injury report with a knee. Anything you saw there, and maybe kind of, let the listeners in a little bit on what you might know about that, and maybe if we're going to see him this weekend.
Yeah, Cooper Cup had landed on his left knee in the end zone during a touchdown catch and basically pinched his left knee down between himself and the turf. And to me, it seemed like he was stuck in a little bit of like a Varus position, meaning knee out to the side before obviously the ground had met his knee. And we know that he didn't come back after that. So my first expectation is a potential LCL sprain. We don't know how bad it was. Obviously, he probably got some swelling, which kept him from coming back in. Maybe a little bit of a meniscus issue. It's hard to say exactly what he's dealing with because we didn't see him come back. We haven't seen him move, and he hasn't been in practice. But as always, I remain positive and hope to see him this weekend because he's a heck of a player.
Let our listeners know the difference and just kind of because you'll hear LCL, which is lateral collateral ligament, then you'll hear MCL, which is medial collateral ligament. Maybe just where those ligaments are, like you say, LCL, lateral on the outside of the knee, medial inside. And usually you hear a lot. It's much more common, is it not, to get an MCL in a football because you're getting that outside force as opposed to an LCL?
Yes, very common. You're correct. Exactly. And he got caught in just the right funny position where someone was pushing his knee inside to outside, which would stress that LCL. Now, the MCL is more common too because it's also kind of a fan shaped ligament, maybe not quite as strong, whereas the LCL is a little bit more rope shaped, if that makes sense. So typically, LCL sprains heal up pretty good. They scar over and you can get a guy back. But as all things, it depends severity.
Exactly. And we expect to see Keon Coleman back this weekend. Obviously, Amari Cooper has worked through his wrist injury. Coleman seems to have been a lot more serious or extensive. Do you believe we'll see him without a brace? You think we'll have him with a brace? Are they able to brace this thing up without it hampering his catching ability? Any inside info on that wrist with Keon Coleman?
I'm pretty sure with most of his practice film that we've seen him, he had something around that wrist most of the time. So I would probably expect to see something on there. He seemed very positive in an interview this week. I believe it was yesterday. He spoke with a reporter and said that he will be ready to play this weekend. So like, when a guy says that, you're very hopeful he'll be out there and actually at 100%.
We're blessed to have Dr. Brad Bowen with us here every week from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. And before he gets out of here, we'll let you know how he can get a hold of you. But real quick, last thing I want to talk about, and Kincaid also full all week long, and he was seen wearing a knee brace when he was participating in practice. Some say it was meniscus. Some say it's either that LCL or that medial collateral ligament. Real fast, these braces, they don't just, limit knee, range of motion as far as keeping them stable and keeping the knee from getting in positions that might aggravate that injury. Those braces those guys wear, they can put some stuff into them that they have a unloader type response to them. Let our listeners in on what that is and how that could help him if he does have, say, a medial collateral ligament sprain, and how that brace can help that injury and take that stress off of it.
Yeah, they kind of have those set up where you can have pressure inside to out, outside to in, protecting that particular ligament. Now, I believe we spoke as though it was an MCL sprain. So for a guy like that, the last thing he wants his knee to do is go in. So again, outside to in, whether it's his force or someone landing into him, so that brace is going to try to protect him from that motion. And they can set it up in a way that it's less likely for it to happen. Those braces are only so good, but they do work most of the time.
Excellent. He's Dr. Brad Bowen, fresh off a day of no patients and nothing but snow removal, just like a lot of. So let me ask you real fast before I let you go, as I digress. I have to ask. Obviously, you got a ton of snow where you live. Joe got a ton of snow where he lives. I heard there's really not any snow out by the airport. Did it hit everything, or is it just certain areas?
It drifts up and down with the bands that we get. It goes north, it moves back south, and this one pretty much covered everybody south of the airport, as far as I know. And fingers crossed, all the players can get to the airport when they need to and take off.
Outstanding. Real fast, let our listeners in on how they can come see if they have an injury, if they just want to get better at their sport. If they're a weekend warrior, they go out and play a lot of softball, shoot some hoops. Golfers, I know a lot of stress on that back. They can come see you and you can get them in some prehab stuff. Let everybody know how they can get a hold of you so that if they have some issues or they just want to get better, they can come see you.
Yeah, shovelers too. Shovelers, Jerry.
Yes,
They're out there
shovelers.
everywhere today. Yeah, you can give me a call at 716-341-9694 or check out my website at drivenptperformance.com.
He's Dr. Brad Bowen. He's on the Big O Show every Thursday, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. Brad, we appreciate it. Stay warm, man, and hopefully that snow doesn't come back and remove all that work that you did all day long.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy your weather down there too, Jerry. Go Bills.
All right, go Bills. He's Dr. Brad Bowen, and like I said, blessed to have him come on with us, agree to come on the show. But last week we talked a little bit about, we kind of got into some analytics and we broke down this Bills offense and just to show some of the things they're doing well, some of the things they're not doing well. It's only, the timing is perfect. We've had a ton of talk all week long, sports radio, Twitter, wherever a fan can get involved about this Bills defense as they lost that game last week. Obviously, very, very poor performance on the defensive side of the ball and the special team side of the ball as well, as it's just as important as those other two phases. Bills lose 2 or 3 phases in that loss to the Rams. And when you talk about this Bills defense, there's so much emphasis placed upon scheme. And I wanted to bring something up, and I talked about it before the show started. Chris Sims, who is a member of the Believe Network, like we are, like myself, Joe, and John, he tweeted something out today that I thought was really, really important and something that I think kind of sums up this Bills defense a little bit. And Chris Sims said this: Bills defense just doesn't have a singular player who can wreck a game. They rely so much on scheme over talent, and when Bills play a team that can overpower them up front and they get forced to play man-to-man, it's over. There's a lot of truth to that comment. If you look at a lot of these teams, the Browns, for instance, Myles Garrett, you look at the Steelers, TJ Watt, and some others. You look at San Francisco when they're healthy, okay? They got Fred Warner at middle linebacker, the best middle linebacker in football, and then you have Nick Bosa that's healthy, okay? There's teams across the league that even if the defense is struggling, they have individual players that can change the course of a game. And right now in Buffalo, when you look at this team, we really don't have that. I think that's maybe what Bills brass or the Bills administration was trying to do when they took the gamble on signing Von Miller. Obviously, Von has the ACL injury. Age kind of creeps up on him. Von doing some things that we all hoped he would do this year, but Von just hasn't been that constant disruptor. And when you look at this Bills defense, and we're going to break down the passing side of it at first and just kind of how they rank. And this is all kind of advanced analytics stuff. Again, say it every week. Not an analytics junkie, but it does tell a story when you need it to. But right now, this Bills defense is they're giving up a completion rate of 69.1%. That's the 5th highest in the NFL. 2,909 yards passing. That's the 8th best in the league. 18 touchdowns they've given up in passing. 17th highest, 13 interceptions. That's the 6th best in the league, and that's telling by the plus-minus ratio being plus 17, best in the league. 89.9% on quarterback rating. That is the 13th lowest in the NFL. 29 sacks, 21st ranked in the NFL. 2.56 seconds to throw. Basically, that means a quarterback, his average, he has 2.5 seconds, 2.56 seconds before he throws it, or has to scramble or whatever. That's the 17th lowest in the league. 3.4 seconds time to sack. That's the 22nd highest in the league. Okay, meaning not very good. This is something that's interesting. Their pressure rate, their pressure percentage is 31.5%. That's 13th best in the league. Not bad, not amazing, but not bad. And finally, they got 6 batted passes, 6 passes knocked down up front. That's the 22nd highest in the league. And if you look at these numbers, these analytics, it tells a story to me anyway, that again, it goes to that area that we've been, I don't want to say harping on, but it's been a hyper-focused area for this Buffalo Bills defense, and that is the play up front, those 4 guys on that defensive line. Coverage goes hand in hand with pass rush, just like vice versa. A team that covers, you got a higher percentage to sack the quarterback. A team that sacks the quarterback at a high rate, your coverage percentage is really, really good. And I think this Bills team is having an issue getting the quarterback on a consistent basis. And when we get into our keys to the game this week, that's going to be of high emphasis when you start talking about Jared Goff. And I'll give you my reasons why. But this Bills defense in the passing side of it, cover two, they tried to play some man this past week against the Rams because they were getting torched in their zone defense, those underneath routes and things like that. We're having to blitz the quarterback to try to get pressure. Stafford, again, he has some nimbleness to him, but he's not an amazing guy as far as scrambling goes. We have another situation like that. Jared Goff right now, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Give you some of those numbers here in a little bit. But when you look at Goff, he's not a running threat. He's a throwing quarterback. They throw a ton of play action. They do throw some screens and things like that. But he's a guy that you can get to if you get some pressure. Bills are going to have to figure out a way to get pressure without blitzing, because if they do blitz, Detroit will make you pay. So we move to the rushing side, the rushing defense. Bills' defense as far as rushing goes. If you look at these statistics, they also tell a story. 1,600 yards, okay? That's the 19th lowest in the league, all right? 123.1 yards per game, 14th lowest. 4.72 yards per carry. The Bills are giving up a rush to a tailback. That's a little bit better than it was last week before they played the Rams. They actually lowered that number last week when they played the Rams. That's the 7th worst in the league. All right, 10 rushing touchdowns given up, 6th best. 5.9% of the runs, the explosive runs, 5.9% of runs over 15 yards. That's the 7th highest in the league, giving up a ton of explosive runs over 15 yards. 48.2% stuff rate. Okay, what the stuff rate is that defensive front, as soon as the ball's handed off, you get a tackle for loss, a tackle for no gain. 3rd worst in the league. Okay, 3rd worst in the league. You look at missed tackles, 0.19 missed tackles per carry. Way not good. A number that is not good in the NFL. 2.26 yards before contact. Okay, what that means is when the running back is handed the ball, he's averaging 2.26 yards before anybody puts a finger or hand on him. That doesn't mean get him on the ground. That means before contact. 3rd worst percentage in the NFL. 40.7% of the runs against the Bills are zone, with a 41.32% success rate, and 47.2% of the runs the Bills see are gap scheme plays where you got pullers, folds, and things like that. They don't play that very well at 46.9 when this defensive front is actually built for penetration, for gap penetration, and to stop gap-style runs. So again, when you look at the rushing numbers, where does all the focus go upon? It goes upon that defensive front. Now, you look at the front, and people are saying, like I got a little bit into it on Twitter today, because people were panicking that the Bills did not practice, that they had a virtual learning day. Folks, at this point in time, players need rest. Mental days are not a big deal to me. They've been doing this since July. Mid to end of July, these guys have been in camp. And the physical side of the game, they get. Their bodies are attuned to contact. Everybody that plays is playing with something, okay? Everybody that plays is playing with some sort of injury, some sort of nagging injury. They don't have to be on the injury list, okay, to have something to deal with. So to me, I'm a person that my last 7 games that I played, I didn't practice all week long for 7 straight weeks. It can be done. You take mental reps, you understand how to play as a vet, and you go about your business, because this is a Bills defensive line that is a veteran defensive line. Russo has a ton of games. Epinesa has a ton of games. Okay. Ed Oliver has a ton of games. This front, Hill has a ton of games. This front, they've played a lot of football. So it's not like they're inexperienced in the, we got to go out and have this physical practice and line the scout team up and get after them and all those things. That's not going to fix this problem. Okay. It's not going to fix this problem. What needs to happen, is they got to either A, play the scheme better of what they're trying to do, B, change the scheme up a little bit to help them what they have up front, which I think they've got the players to play the scheme they want. I think some of it is, maybe some guys are showing, like Daquan might be showing a little bit of age. Ed's been fighting injuries all season long. I don't know if that hamstring's 100%. You've got guys that are, fighting some things. And then third is you find better players. That's not always the answer. I think this Bills defensive front has a ton of talent, but they have to get some help somewhere along the way. So if you look at these, advanced analytic type things, you look at the passing, you look at the rushing of this Bills defense, I think the focus comes up front, and it really does. And, if the Bills want to beat Detroit, that group up front is going to have to play well. And they're going to have to figure out a way to make plays, especially plays behind the line of scrimmage, tackles for loss, sacks, and those kinds of things. So anyway, as I said before the show started, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate your support as always. Thanks for listening to our content. We have a really good time bringing this stuff to you every week. I enjoy this show because it gets me into the game. It gets me seeing things and kind of getting a feel for the game. So when I go into watching on Sunday, I kind of have these things in my mind that, you look at some statistics and some different things, and you obviously have a little bit of a head start on it. So, when you're watching the game Sunday, think about some of the stuff we talked about today and just see if you see it in this game plan. But keys to the game this week as we move towards the end of the show here on a Thursday on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network powered by Believe. My first key to the game is get stops. And this is a situation where this defense doesn't have to stop them every time they are on the field. It'd be nice. It'd be awesome. We would love that to happen. But they just got to get a few, whether it's 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, just get some stops to get off the field and let Josh Allen and this offense, it's obviously working at a very good clip. And we talked about Chris Sims' comment about not having that guy to take over a game. Obviously, we have that guy on offense in Josh Allen. If you have a chance, I believe I saw the clip on Twitter from a guy named last name of Beauvais. You can go watch it, and you watch Dan Campbell talk about Josh Allen and just the way he glowingly talks about him. And he talks about his physical attributes. He talks about his abilities as a passer and a runner. But the thing that he does better than anybody, and I've seen this for a long time, and I've said this for a long time, Josh's competitiveness is second to none to nobody in the league. And he's going to find a way to take a game over and be successful. And we have that piece on offense. We don't necessarily have that piece on defense. But again, first key to game, you got to get stops. Lions right now, 45.8% on third down conversions. That's good enough for fifth in the league, okay? They convert big time on third down. But you got to play all 4 downs against Detroit because they go for it all the time on fourth down. If you look at this Lions team and Dan Campbell and his willingness to go for it on fourth down, okay, they've got 15 fourth down conversions out of 22 attempts. Okay, that's good enough for 68.2%. That's insane. All right. If you look at last week, they were 4 of 5, and they went for it on fourth down on their side of the field multiple times, deep in their own territory. He's willing to take that risk because he believes in his team that much, not just his defense, but also his offense to be able to make up those points if they have to. 4 of 5 last week, 15 to 22 on fourth down. You can't just go ahead and get the third down, stop them, and figure the series is over. You got to stay mentally into it. You got to stay mentally prepared to play fourth down. So the Bills got to get stops this week, something they did not do last week against the Rams, because stops mean obviously no points, but the most important thing for the Bills, stops mean Josh Allen gets the ball an extra series, and the Bills need that to be successful. My second key to the game, okay, and it goes back to that guy we're just talking about. You got to keep Josh Allen rolling. You got to keep Allen rolling. 115 quarterback rating in back-to-back games, 6 total touchdowns last week. He leads the league in adjusted quarterback rating at 76.7%. He's taken 0 sacks in the last 3 games, 13 total for the season. Yes, sacks given up is an offensive line statistic, but it also has to do with Josh Allen and his ability to get away from pressure. He does not panic under pressure. And while this line is playing very, very well, Allen does a very good job of getting away from opposing teams' rushers. Just like they talk about all the time, wins aren't solely a quarterback statistic. Well, sacks aren't solely a offensive line statistic. If you don't believe me, watch Off Tackle with John Fina on Monday. He will learn you up. He will teach you what it's all about, because there's a lot of factors that go into a sack, and it's not always whether the offensive line blocked or didn't block. I know that's the simple aspect, but that's not always the case. But if you look at Josh Allen, they've got to figure out a way to keep him rolling. I think we saw a little bit last week. We talked about on the postgame show on Sunday, a little bit of that Bills running game that kind of, showed up that was like the Bills running game last year. Yes, they ran for over 100 yards, but 82 of it was Josh Allen's. At this point in time, playing really good football teams late in the season, the Bills will have to continue to find a way to get Josh involved. I'd like to see a few more quarterback runs. This is a Detroit team that's playing with linebacker number 6, 7, or 8 on the inside. They are banged up at linebacker. If you get past that first line of defenders, he can make some plays. So they've got to keep Josh rolling, keep him highly involved in this offense. And I know he is every week, but you've got to keep him involved even more. And I'd like to see more of those quarterback runs. My third key to the game is, and we talked about it when we talked about defensive analytics, they got to get after Jared Goff. Okay. Goff has only been sacked 2 times in the last 2 games. All right. His non-adjusted quarterback rating is 109.1. That's second in the league. He's playing incredibly well. 72.5% completion rate. Okay. This is a guy that is, if you'd have told me that Jared Goff was going to be this type of quarterback, I'd have told you were crazy. But obviously, in the right system, which Detroit runs, and they went ahead and got him. They made the trade. They sent Stafford out west and brought Goff over to Detroit. Obviously, they felt he was their quarterback, and he is proving that. One thing about Jared Goff, and we talk about getting after him, he is not a running threat. I don't think he's had a double-digit yardage scramble this year. If he did, it's very, very few times. So he's not going to run the ball. And this is the Bills defense coming off a performance against Matthew Stafford last week that gave up 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, 132.6 quarterback rating, 10.7 yards per attempt, and Stafford was 23 of 30. They've got to find a way to right that ship. Now, I do believe that the Detroit passing game will be something that is possibly easier to defend for this Bills scheme on defense than the wide open, high-flying type of offense that the Rams ran. But still, it's going to be hard to defend, and a lot of people have tried this season. A lot of people have failed. So big test for the Bills defense. Again, that onus on the defensive line. They've got to get after Jared Goff. My fourth key to the game also relies on that defense and relies on the defensive front once again, and that is you got to control Sonic and Knuckles. And if you don't know who I'm talking about Gibbs and Montgomery. All right, the best running back tandem in the NFL this season. They are dual threats in the passing game and running the football. If things break down and coverage is there, they will catch the ball out of the backfield and make huge plays. All right, they make this team go. We've talked about it with the Miami Dolphins with A-Chain. I truly believe that Detroit's offense is what they are because of these two. They're two guys that are very, very complementary backs, a little bit different styles. This is a tall test for this Bills defense, especially up front. They got to figure out a way to control these two. And you can talk about gap schemes. You can talk about being gap sound on all that stuff. Honestly, if the Bills defense is playing well, that defensive line is playing behind the line of scrimmage. They're a couple yards, 3 yards in the line of scrimmage. And you're going to try to do that against a offense for Detroit with Decker, who is now healthy, Taylor Decker, Graham Glasgow, Frank Ragnow, Kevin Zeitzler, and Penei Sewell up front. If you think the Bills' offensive line is good, this offensive line is elite as well. These are all Pro Bowl type players, highly physical type players. Bills got to find a way to get behind the line of scrimmage, and that's the only way you're going to go ahead and control this running game, and they got to find a way to get after Goff and the quarterback. And finally, when you're playing big games like this, last week my last key to the game was control the controllables. And what I meant by that, I talked about special teams, not fumbling the ball, and all those types of things. To me, this Buffalo Bills team needs to find a way to make 1 to 3 big plays in all phases of the game. There's got to be a momentum changer. There's got to be a big play, whether it's a pick six, whether it's a scoop and score, whether it's a strip sack, whether it's a punt return for a touchdown. They have to find a way to make those big explosive plays that aren't necessarily by Josh Allen in the offense. The defense and special teams need to score this week. I really, truly believe that. I think this Detroit team is that good. So those are my keys to the game. Just to kind of run through them real quick again. Get stops, and I'm not saying every time. It's naive to think that they can stop them every drive, but they got to get off the field an extra 2, 3, hopefully 4 times a half. Give Josh Allen more possessions and chance to score. You got to keep Josh Allen rolling. I want to see more running out of him. When I say running, I don't mean scrambling. I'm talking about called runs for Josh. I think that this is the time of year we got to get him downhill and doing some things in the running game. You got to get after Goff. That's my third key, is get after Jared Goff in the pass rush, because he has been highly productive this year. It will be a little bit harder for these defensive linemen to get to him because they do so much play action. So when a defensive lineman comes off the ball, he gets hard play action by an offensive lineman. He hesitates a second. And then when he sees it's play action pass, then he continues his pass rush. That's why it's hard to get to a quarterback in a heavy play action concept, because those defensive linemen are taught keys, they're taught gaps and all those things. And when the key is run, they hesitate before they go ahead and get into their full pass rush scenario. They're going to have to do a good job of that. My fourth key, again, control Sonic and Knuckles. That's Montgomery and Gibbs. Guys they make this offense go, and they've got to figure out a way to slow them down. And finally, I want to see a score on offense, or I definitely want to see a score on offense, but I want to see a score on defense, and I want to see a score on special teams. We need a big play. We haven't seen one in a minute, and we need to see one. We need a corner pick six, something of that nature. Now, granted, there's some things we don't know yet. Obviously, Bills weren't there today to practice, but I'm not sweating it. If anything, it was probably refreshing to get a day away from the complex, especially considering the high pressure of this week and playing what many call the team that's going to be the Super Bowl representative in the NFC, and playing them at their place this week after such a, disappointing loss against the Rams last week in LA, especially when your offense played at the level they played. It's probably good for them to get away a little bit. Not stressed about the no practice today. They'll come in tomorrow, probably do a little bit more than they would normally do on a Friday. And when I say that, maybe they'll put the spider pads on instead of just helmets. They'll get a little bit more tempo out of it. But the Bills should be fresh coming into Sunday's game at 4:25 in Detroit. So as always, folks, I appreciate you listening. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and we will be here next week to give you more of the next game to break down. Again, as always, tomorrow, if these walls could talk, and those guys have some really, really cool shows. They talk about a lot of the stuff from a long time ago, and they kind of tie it in with what's going on today. So check those guys out. Then Sunday, myself and John and Joe will be on with the post-game show, as we always are, probably 8 Eastern time, but I'm sure Joe will let us know exactly what time here in the next day or two. Then Monday, the off-tackle show with John Fina. And by the way, folks, you want to talk about tremendous breakdown of offensive line play, and not just offensive line play, but if there's something in the game that John feels is important to get into, he'll get into it. I know he did this week. I believe it was Matt Milano. He broke down some of his stuff. John is as knowledgeable as they come, incredibly smart player, and it'll be worth your time to watch his show on Mondays, because you'll learn something about offensive line play, and you'll learn maybe the fact that what I might think I see, you don't actually see. So check him out on Monday, Offbeat, on the beat rather on Tuesday. We'll talk to a reporter, and then Hump Day Hotline on Wednesday, as always, and back to me on Thursday. So once again, folks, thanks as always. Let's hope for a really, really good performance out of our Bills, especially that defensive side of the ball as we take on the Detroit Lions. Some say this is a Super Bowl precursor. I'd rather play a easier team in the Super Bowl than them, to be honest with you. But if that's who we play, so be it. So check that out. We'll be back in the post-game show. And as always, folks, hit the like, hit the subscribe. We'll see you next week. Much love. Go Bills.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma. Same old dreams hanging off my shoulders. Just wishing and waiting on a shoe.